Okay, so we'll get started with the prayer and then we'll get started and give you a little intro on what we're doing here today. We are starting on we're going to finish step 9 at the end of it and bust into step 10. God, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for my life today. Creator, I ask for your guidance today in all areas of my life. I ask for your support and your courage and your wisdom and clarity and healing and hope and power. I ask for your power, Creator, and everything that I do left to my own devices, I'll fuck it up. Can you please help me out when I need it? And more than when I need it, just try to bring that to me all the time, Creator. Creator, I ask for prayers for, our Indigenous brothers and sisters who are still sick and suffering out there, and our other nations and races that are also sick and suffering, that you bring some type of light or whatever it is that that they need to try to help us on the right path towards you, Creator. I ask for help for my brothers and sisters on this meeting today, Creator, that you guide them in a good way, that you open their mind, keep them honest, and allow them to have a new experience with you, with their fellows, with this book and the program and everything in their life, so they can have a new experience today, Creator. Ask for special prayers for my daughters. They're always going through something. They're doing good, but just watch over them, Creator. My little grandbaby too. Anyway, thank you, Creator. Have a great night. Hi.
God, thank you for everybody here tonight. And thank you for Bill. And thank you for the program, the 12 steps. Allow us to connect to you and to move through problems and to get to know ourselves and to become more authentic and to learn to try and move towards what your will might be. I know what my will usually isn't, and I thank you that by doing these steps as best as I can, that I was able to have a birthday party for my son and my family, and my in-laws were able to come together for the first time. And that is a direct result of this program. And thank you for my kids and for what this program gives them just as a result of my participation. Thank you for the community that we have for each other, that we're there when we need each other, and that there is somebody always there to support me when I need it, and that I've learned to ask for help, and that I haven't been disappointed in that. And that you continue to unfold my life in a way that is exciting, more so than it's scary now. And thank you for watching over our city, and be with my parents as well. Amen.
Okay, so we finished off last week right before the step 9 promises, and that's where we're going to start again today. So just kind of like quick recap of like a few things as we get to these step 9 promises. A lot of times in the program you hear them as the promises, the AA promises. They're not the AA promises. They're one component of many promises. If you ask me, the step 10 promises are even more beautiful. But remember when we were way back in We Agnostics on step 2 and on page 52, if you guys want to flip there quickly, I just want to tie something together here. So way back on page 52, middle of the page, it talks about the bedevilments, and then, we call them step 0 promises. So there's a lot of promises in the book, and some promises are, finding jails, institutions, and ultimately death if we don't do this work. And that's a pretty fucking good promise if we don't do this work, right? Where does it take us when we haven't done this work? Without this design for living, where does it take us? It takes us to a bad place. Luckily, we have the program and we've gone through step 1 at that point. We're able to understand our true predicament. We're able to understand that the spiritual malady drives this obsession that I will pick up against my own will. And if I don't seek out a spiritual solution in this power greater than myself, I'll probably perish within this illness. But I do have hope. And if I do seek this power with the desperation of a drowning man, I can fucking live a good life. And like the reality of this, it's a life better than I could even have imagined. So I'm just going to kind of recap these step 9 promises as a barometer, or these step 0 promises, sorry, as a barometer to our recovery. Okay. So we had to ask ourselves, middle of the page 52, why shouldn't we apply to our human problems? These are the human problems that we all suffer from. Okay. The same readiness to change our point of view. 1, we were having trouble with personal relationships. Check. 2, we couldn't control our emotional natures. Check. 3, we were prey to misery and depression. Check. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. Check. 6, we were full of fear. Check. 7, we were unhappy and we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. So if we live in that stuff, we will pick up, because those are the results of living in self. But then it goes on to say, was not a basic solution to these problems more important than fucking anything? Yeah, it was. And when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea does. And it really does work. But it's not just the idea, right? It's not just the concept of God that works. You might get a little bit of relief from some prayers and whatever, talking to somebody, but there's practical application in this book, and primarily in step 10, which we're going to get to tonight. But what I wanted to highlight here was, here's your barometer of your recovery. If you can go through these and go, okay, I'm not living there, I'm not living there, I'm not living there. And if you're working a solid program, you won't be living in most of these. And you're on the right side of the pendulum. But if you start slipping and you are running into self, always go back to this page and see how you're doing. Because if you're getting more of those than you should have, you're probably slipping down banana peel trail. And why I bring that up is because we have the same kind of promises in step 9. So we're going to flip back up to step 9 on page 83. And these are kind of the results of working the program. And as we read these step 9 promises, I'm going to be pretty critical, okay? I won't say that these promises fully come true in your first set of steps. I don't actually believe that. They come true with a consistent, persistent commitment to change. But us as alcoholics, we can rationalize and justify fucking anything. So even at 1 month sober, I'm fucking justifying the step 9 promises. Holy fuck, all this stuff's already happening to me. And it's like, fuck off, right, Bill? Like, no. That's my ability to rationalize and justify what I think is what I think. So these promises can come true. And what I'm going to do is be critical on where you're at and how to use these as a barometer to see where you're actually at, right? Which is a good barometer. And we're not looking for perfection in this like lifetime, but we are looking for a fourth dimension and a way of living that really takes us to a different place that we couldn't really imagine, right? I see a lot of people in the program living, with the breadcrumbs of the program and staying sober. And those crumbs are kind of like, I guess you can kind of live on some crumbs, but why would you want to live on crumbs when you can eat the whole fucking cake? Right. And that's really what living this program will do for you. And then these promises come true to like a real big level. So, and remember, these are the step 9 promises. They come halfway through the step 9s, or with many years in, they fucking really grow and they develop into something really beautiful. So if we were painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. So right off the bat, we know a new a new peace, a new freedom, and new happiness. So you kind of go back and look at your life and go, okay, is this happiness and freedom? Is this new? Or is it kind of the same as before, but now I don't have the substance anymore? Okay. We will not regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. Are you in self-pity? Are you looking at the past? Are you constantly reviewing and rehashing old elements from your past? Where's your mind? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Right? We will comprehend the word serenity. While you can know the word serenity and you can have the definition of serenity and know what it means, but have you comprehended it? Do you have the peace of mind that step 6 promises? Right? The fruits of step 6 give you peace of mind, and we will know peace. And when you know peace, like it was funny, not funny, but Scotty's on here and he was at a meeting the other day, and not to crosstalk you, Scotty, but his share was so powerful because he described the craziness of the mind, and then he relayed the peace that he is feeling and how the brain is just like slowed down, right? And like he's not that far along in his steps, but he's starting to comprehend that word serenity. He sees the ego for what it is and knows there's something else to do. And although he's new in the process, through the complicated versions of what some people are sharing in the room, he's putting the pieces together and fucking taking some different action. And it's really resulting in peace, right? So no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. There's one. There's a barometer promise. No matter how far down the scale you have gone, do you see where you can benefit other people? Are you going to meetings to just benefit yourself? Are you reaching out and talking to newcomers? Are you being of service to your kids and your family in a new way? Or is it still about you, right? It's about finding, we will see how our experience can benefit others, and primarily our experience as addicts, alcoholics, our experience with the spiritual malady, and how we can use these experiences that seem bad. So it's kind of like, let's say I have a terrible thing happen to me this week and I'm really struggling. I know that somewhere down the road, that experience is going to be helpful to somebody. So it actually takes the pain and the suffering away, because I know that it's part of God's plan. Not only for me to learn the lesson, but for me to help somebody else learn their lesson. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Has that actually happened? Has the feeling of uselessness and self-pity disappeared? Or is it disappearing? Because a lot of people in the program have worked the steps and they're still in this feeling of uselessness and self-pity and blame. And when I talk about the theory of God, or, self-willing the principles in all of our affairs, it doesn't really combat what we're talking about here. Like, you can work the steps and think that you've done the steps, but if you're not working the practical application, chances are you're going to be self-willing the principles into your affair, and you're going to be like, oh shit, I'm arguing with my kid. I'm just going to be nice, or I'm going to be forgiving, or I'm going to be whatever it is. But you're self-willing a principle that's still based in self, so you're still running the show, which is why you don't really feel much better when it's all said and done. And then you don't know how to navigate those situations properly, and you still feel confused. Why? Because you haven't found the truth of yourself, and you're not setting the boundary out of that God-centeredness within yourself. When you find that, you can set these boundaries out of true God-centeredness, and you can leave those results up to God. You can jump in anytime.
Oh, okay. I was just thinking while you were reading there, you made a comment yesterday about sponsorship when we were chatting, and it applies to this too. Like, you can read this just like when you're sponsoring. So for me, while Bill was reading it, I was thinking about how this changed in my approach to working with others. So outside of just work, but like people in general, when they would phone, my friends and family, and I suppose at work too, I would feel like my solutions, even though they were well-intentioned and they seemed logical, sometimes they just weren't adding up and they just weren't the actual solution. And now it's like, I feel like when I work with someone, I really do have a solution because it's been given through God and through this program. And I don't have to rely on myself, which is less effort in a way, to just have the book to rely on and have God doing what God does through people. And so, Bill yesterday had made a comment about just like how sponsorship is where he's learned a lot of the lessons that, like, the practical application parts come alive in a different way in sponsorship. And so if you read this, like, sponsorship, so I started this thought at, we will know a new freedom and happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And so for me, like Bill just said it a little bit, where I was convinced that now it could be useful. My experience could be useful, but I wasn't convinced just because I read it and it was like, okay, it's through working with other people. And profoundly, a moment when I did a step 5, I've spoken about this in a previous episode, but I did this step 5 at a treatment center with a woman who brought something out of me that I had forgotten, that I was like, when I was suicidal, I had these thoughts of bringing my baby with me. And that was buried. And I don't know if that would have ever come up again, but there it was. And it was actually something that it was also profound to her and set her free in some ways. And so, that moment, I won't forget it because it was so God inspired. Like, I would have forgotten that thought because it's horrific. And it was probably so suppressed, I would never look at it again. But then God brings it forward when it can be of value. And so then through sponsorship and through working with others who are alcoholics, who have the malady and who have this illness in a way that we understand, all of those experiences are not for nothing. And I never know when they're going to come up again. And often when they do, it's like, man, thank goodness for that experience. I would never be able to see that in the person or to be able to reach that in the person. And so we will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others through sponsorship. I don't know how else I could get convinced in that way to the depth that I am without sponsoring, because it's not relatable in a lot of other situations, with friends and family, like my experience, although they appreciate hearing about it now, it's just not the same as helping another alcoholic. And there's nothing more miraculous to me than seeing somebody who is hopeless and at their wit's end, who, if I would have crossed paths with them in like a mental health world, I would have been like, man, the chances of them sobering up is like so low because the stats are what they are. And then through the program, people will just become alive in ways that you don't see, and relatively quickly. Like, it doesn't take a long time. So the feeling of usefulness and self-pity will disappear through sponsorship. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows through sponsorship. Self-seeking will slip away through sponsorship. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people through sponsorship, fear of people. If you're scared of people and you can't look people in the eye, sponsorship will move you through that. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Well, for me, that was like, I had a mom. I have a mom who one time I was really trying to weigh out if I was going to move to Calgary or not. And she goes, well, why don't we make a pros and cons sheet? And these are the types of solutions I would have, that I have thrown out there too. But I remember feeling like, geez, like that is not helpful for me to think this out with my own mind at a pros and cons. And so now I have like these answers that have come through this program that are actually effective. And I feel like I am of service in an effective way through God and through this program, because suddenly I realized God is doing for me what I couldn't do for myself.
Perfect. Okay, so let's keep going along this list. We will lose interest in selfish things. Have we actually lost interest in ourselves and gained interest in our fellows? And to what degree, right? Maybe, and like I said to start the session, like these things will grow, right? And a lot of how they grow is exactly what Janine had said. But they do start growing through going your initial set of steps, second set of steps. And as you kind of gain the courage to sponsor, which is kind of a necessity of the program, in my opinion. And we don't wait. Oh, I don't need to wait for a year. Like, that's not what the book says. And that wasn't my experience either. And that's not the experience that I give the people that work with me. As soon as we're done, it's like, okay, you're going to start sponsoring. Why? Because you got the depth and weight. You know what it's like to be an alcoholic. You've been through the material, and even though you might not think you got what it takes, the words and the intuition are going to come to you once you start reading this material, and you will see God can do for you what you couldn't do for yourself. And you'll surprise yourself. And then your heart opens and everything changes. And the more you do it, the more your heart opens, the more you heal, the more you talk about your traumas and your hurts and your pains, the more that you heal them. So it's like constantly doing like step 5s and pulling on that power. And like, it's hard to really explain.
Like how you talk about sober patterns.
Yeah.
And how relevant that is, like the time thing where you just stay sober a day at a time, and you develop not only patterns, but you develop like your history and looking back, and you're able to connect the dots as you get a better understanding of yourself through God, and you can look back and connect these dots, and then these things are proven in those ways because you have the proof through the time looking backwards. Yeah.
Okay, self-seeking will slip away. Is self-seeking slipped away? Is it slipping away, or has it slipped away? Or are you still fucking grasping at everything in your life for you? And if you are, then these other ones probably aren't in effect either, because it's still all about me. Has your whole attitude and outlook upon life changed? That really resonates with me in the step 7, where it says the most profound result of all is our change in our attitude towards God. God is no longer a bush league pinch hitter to only be called upon in emergency. Refusing to place God first, I now deprive myself of his help, and I fucking know that. So I have this willingness to seek this power in the things that I do. And it might not always come at first when you're first working the program. And why I'm emphasizing all this is because we're getting to step 10 tonight, where it's gonna fucking happen. Step 10 is the keys to the kingdom, to the relationship, to clearing the channel, removal of defects, finding this most profound result of all, to more prayer meditation that has so much more power, and then ultimately service. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. That's true. Looking people in the eye. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have lots of money, so you're not going to have to worry about money. Like for me today, like I make a fraction of what I used to make in my life, a fraction of what I made, right? But I don't have economic insecurity today. And I'm not piling up a whole shitload of money in my fucking RRSPs or nothing like that. And I don't even know why I'm not worried about anything. It's kind of scary to not be worried, because everyone else is worried about theirs. And then I'm like, well, why aren't you worried about yours? And I don't know. And I don't really care, right? But we'll see how it goes. But I think the removal of economic insecurity is kind of ties into like that line in the We Agnostics on the very last page, where it says, he humbly offered himself to his maker, then he knew. He knew he was going to be okay, man. By walking this path with God, a lot of these things just kind of work themselves out, and God fucking writes my paycheck. And like I hear in the meeting, oh, God doesn't pay my bills. Fucking right, he does. He does pay my bills. Like literally, I'm not even fucking kidding you. And I know it sounds corny, but it's true, man. And anyone that actually knows me, they'd probably say, yep, they pay his bills somehow. I don't know what the fucking guy even does for work half the time, but he's fucking always been able to be okay. And it's true. And I really believe that if you sincerely take the position, God being my new employer, being all powerful, he necessarily provides what I need if I stay close to him and perform his work well. I work for God. He pays me with what I need if I perform his work well and I stay close to him. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Yeah. And that comes over time again. And we'll talk about more of that in the step 10. Yeah. Like finding this power that's in us where we don't use the mind like we used to use it. The mind's always trying to figure shit out. We don't need to figure shit out most of the time. We need to get quiet and listen. We need to feel the feelings. We need to get in tune with the anxiety in our body and talk to it and ask it, what are you trying to show me or teach me? Or the fear or whatever it is. That's our body's always talking to us. Our mind is talking to us. Our skin's talking to us. Like everything's talking to us and it's giving us signs for something. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us for what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? Fuck, I think they are. I really do. I know everyone says I think not, but fuck, I always say I think they are. It's pretty extravagant compared to how I fucking normally live. We think they are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It doesn't have to be slowly. It can be quickly. Like at least in the first 3 years of your recovery, of really working like a serious program, you can have a lot of these promises like really manifesting joy and vitality into your life. Doesn't have to be slowly. But when I look around the rooms, typically of Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't surprise me that it's fucking slowly, because half of the fucking message in the room is fucking bullshit. And I'm not knocking down like AA as a whole. I'm saying that the message that's been watered down in the program really affects people and their actual growth that they could have in the program because of what people think the program is. And that the book's not the centerpiece. Like if the big book isn't on display at the meeting, like what the fuck are we talking about, right? We're talking about our opinions and our theories and how our fucking cat pissed on our blanket this morning and whatever, right? So what I love to implore with you guys is like carry that message out of the book. Be the spearhead, man. Jesse just jumped on. He's moved over to BC and we were chatting the other day and I'm like, be the spearhead, bro. If recovery's different there, you fucking push it. I went to Regina, I pushed it and I got lots of flack from it. And I felt like, you know, people didn't like me, but I fucking didn't care. I just kept going and going and going and going. And then eventually some cool shit happened. I sponsored a guy who had been a chronic fucking homeless shelter guy. And then people started noticing, holy shit, this guy talking about the book, God, and sponsorship sobered up the fucking town drunk. I didn't, God did. But I was the one who was the conduit. And then another guy, and then that's this woman, and then next thing you know, fucking, you know, little seeds were planted in that city and it really took off. It was really fucking interesting, really cool. And that journey, this journey that we walk, it's a hard journey. You got to be really in your path and really moving forward. And if you're stuck in self, you'll fall off because you'll want the validation from all the people around you. And then you'll fall back into what everyone else is doing. We can't do what everyone else is doing. We can't do what's normal, because when you do what's normal, you get drunk and high, because that's normally what happens with people when they try to recover. Doing what's hard, going that other path, talking your truth and speaking your truth and doing this on a harder, higher level is very hard. And sometimes it's lonely, but really when you understand the line in the book where it says the fellowship you crave will grow up about you, that's the one, Matt. That's the fellowship we crave, is that fellowship with the Spirit. It's not just I'm an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic, high five, now I'm going to resent you because you fucked the chick I wanted, right?
I
whatever.
just want to mention what happened last night a little bit, because I thought it was good.
Go for it.
I thought it was very interesting, the reaction that you got from the man that you were correcting, and I thought that it needed to be corrected. And so what had happened last night was we were at a meeting and somebody had said, an old timer had said step 6 and 7 are the same, which is wrong. And it's a bad message, and he was pretty adamant about it. So Bill shared after him and respectfully, and actually said respectfully, corrected him to his own understanding of it. And he did it in a way that And the guy received it. I watched the guy's body language and I watched what was happening, and he wasn't like, he didn't close off. He wasn't seeming upset, but he just kind of nodded along with Bill's opinion, like whatever, you know. But it wasn't really even about that guy. It was like the message needed to be corrected, in my opinion, because for everyone else in the room, it's not about the guy who given the wrong message. It's about everyone else in the room who's really trying to get sober and who needs the right message, because the wrong message is deadly. And so, and deadly in a bad way. And so I just like, I thought it was interesting. This guy didn't take it the wrong way, which isn't always the case. But I think the fear of speaking up, like the fear of not speaking up is worse, you know, like with the things that happen when we don't speak up. And especially for the newcomer, I think like that motivated me at the beginning to say the things I wouldn't normally say, just because like I felt like to defend the newcomer is something that was more important than me speaking up at first. But I just wanted to mention that because that happened last night, and it went over really well. And I think it really taught everybody like in the room, like it's okay to correct a wrong message, and there's nothing to actually fear in it. And people appreciated even the message guy who seemed to receive it.
And then on that same note, I had met this woman who shared at the meeting last night, but I never knew her before. And I'd seen her at the meetings for the last couple weeks. And then as she shared, I wanted to pretty much cry because it was so like heartfelt and just so genuine and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, she's sharing and then looking at me and I'm like, oh, I must have said something maybe.
Yeah.
But then after the meeting, we talked and she like said, thank you for inspiring me. Thank you. I've heard everything you said for the last 2 weeks or whatever it was. And you like inspired me to like do this and get a sponsor and take the action in my life. And, you know, and I was just like, wow, fucking, because that's what it's about, right? Helping people fucking take responsibility for their own path and not sitting there and fucking coddling their self-pity all day long, and then they fucking drink again going, what's wrong with me? Right?
And the whole thing that speaking up is like, it's often going to piss people off. Like that's the thing, is like if you speak up and you say what isn't like mainstream, like almost always though there's going to be someone mainstream who's going to, you know, speak you off at a minimum. And that's all just like fear that means nothing. Like there's nothing to actually fear in that from what I can see. Like somebody who's mainstream who disagrees with me, like that fear is my ego creating me to be quiet. And so to use God to move past that, and like when it comes up, and it can come up really strongly, like if it comes up and you notice it, try your best to move through it. Like just like pray, use God, and like try to move through it. And don't just fall into the fear. So when you notice it coming up, try to move through it, and like that's where you gain the momentum. It's just pushing through it. So
and pulling on the power. So as we're talking about like sharing in the rooms, this all transmits to all our individual lives. As we like walk in our life, it's more risky to not say something when something needs to be said in your life. So many of us are afraid of the conflict that we're going to get by saying the words that we need to say when they need to be said. But you never really avoid that conflict anyway, because the conflict's always right fucking here. So as you're on the journey to truth, I'll say truth. Truth is based in love. Authentic self, truth, love for yourself. As you're on that journey to find that, you speak in your truth, even if it's based in the fear. Because through the speaking of the truth, even based in the fear of the truth that you think you know, and you keep an open mind, you'll fucking move down the road towards authentic self of truth. And you'll love yourself because of it. Although down the road, you might even humiliate yourself or hurt yourself with what you said because maybe it's not the truth. But that's not the point. The point is that you move. And you can learn through learning what not to do, because learning what not to do is kind of pushing you in the direction of learning what to do. That's why I say in step 6 that you're not making mistakes anymore. We don't make mistakes. We make decisions that we grow and we learn from, and we have a desire to seek and do God's will, which is the highest level of humility that we're seeking. But we have to go through sometimes the humiliation and sometimes the pain. But at least if the goal is that desire to seek and do God's will and fucking find your authentic truth, and you pull on the power as you go. Go ahead.
So there was an episode early on, like when we first started this book study, that I'd said something that, I don't know, it came up not too long ago, and you're like, yeah, well, remember when you said that? And I was like, oh yeah, yeah. And then you're like, yeah, that was wrong. And I was like, yeah, that was wrong, because I have grown and changed since then. And I can see like, oh, I see how I was short-sighted there because I hadn't had enough experience, or like things have changed my mind since then. And yeah, like it's not the end of the world that I said something that now I've grown past, and I look back and I don't agree. So it's an example of like, if I was just to sit here and not say what's on my mind, I think it's the truth when I'm talking, and it's the truth to the best that I understand right now. Maybe I'll change my mind down the road because I'll grow past it, or I'll see it in a different way. But I can't sit here not talking and being scared of that I might grow past myself, and say, I got to just keep doing what I'm doing and trust that, I'm going to keep growing. And if I've said something or done something that I wouldn't do down the road, that's a good thing, because it means that I've grown past that. Things that I would have even actions, like I referenced dating, like the treatment center relationship, I've grown past that, and I'm not embarrassed that happened. I understand why it did, but it's like, you want to be able to look back and say, I've grown past that. And speaking up is one of those things that you're never going to go wrong by speaking what you think is your truth in that moment.
10-4. They will always materialize if we work for them. And the work is many different components. It's all the components. So now we're going to bust into step 10. But before we bust into it, a few items to kind of talk about. When we make this decision way back in step 3, I offer myself to thee. God, build with me, do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, take away these difficulties. We're talking about defects of character. We're talking about submission, asking God to tear me down, rebuild me in his image and his likeness. So I'm going to quote a line that I always quote: character defects representing instincts gone astray. So it's the character defects that block us from God, and they represent the instincts that have gone astray deep down within us that we can't really see. That's actually what drives us powerfully, blindly, and subtly. That is the cunning, baffling, and powerful part of alcoholism, is the instincts that manifest into these defects of character. So these character defects representing the instincts gone astray have been the primary cause of our destructive drinking and failure at life. They are the number one cause for the destructive drinking, but more so for the failure at life. Because as we act out in these defects, we don't like it in our soul and our spirit. And we feel worse because of it. And then we fucking need to blot it out with the drink or the drug, right? That unless he is now willing to work hard at the elimination of the worst of these defects, both sobriety and peace of mind will still elude him. So if you don't work on these defects that we've talked about the whole study, sobriety eludes you and peace of mind eludes you. Okay, that's why the peace of mind starts coming when you're in step 6. That's one of the promises of step 6, which is actually worked in the 10. That all the faulty foundation of his life will have to be torn out and built upon a new bedrock. So build with me, do with me as thou wilt. The faulty foundation of my life is built in self. Self-seeking, self-pity, self-centeredness, self-centered resentment, self-righteousness, self. That's the foundation of my life. Unbeknownst to me, I was indoctrinated into the system that manifests that foundation. Look outside. Look out your window. Look at all the people. Most people are living in a foundation based in self. And that I have to knock down this faulty foundation and build upon a new bedrock. I build upon a new bedrock, which the foundation is God. And so this step 3, relieve me of the bondage of self, take away these difficulties so that victory over them. The difficulties and bondage of self are the same thing. They're the defects of character. As victory over these may bear witness. Victory insinuates there's probably a fight here. So I'm going to fight to use what I've always used, my old coping patterns and mechanisms and whatever, my ways I navigate life that are causing my failure. Now I got to try something new. So that's where the fight is. Take away these difficulties, as victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Where does this fight happen? Well, it happens in step 10. What is step 10 principle? The principle behind step 10 is perseverance. What's the definition of perseverance? To fight through. So step 10 is where you have the fight with these defects that are going to crop up, because they crop up unbeknownst to you, because they actually are what rule your life. And they are what make you act out in the different behaviors. So if we can be aware of what we're thinking and what we're feeling, we can bring in this power that has the power to fucking start chipping away and knocking down this foundation that fucks us. And we build upon a new bedrock. Slowly, 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 God builds with us and does with us as he will. But we got to be willing, we got to be honest, and we follow the practical application, the approach laid out that's going to be coming up right here. So step 3 is step 10. Step 3, the theory, is actually applied in step 10. Step 10 is where you turn your will and your life over to the care of God. And why step 6 is so important in this step 3 and step 10, because when you understand step 6 at a level, you get what's the word? You get the full impact of what step 6 is trying to bring. So you can either understand step 6 at a full impact and you will work the step 10 inherently. That's how I did it. Or you can understand step 10 and work with your step 6, but work the step 10 and you'll get the results also. I did it by understanding step 6. I didn't really get step 10 when I was 2 years sober working this shit. But later when I put the pieces together of what step 10 was, I was like, fuck, I was doing that. Because I was super willing and I was getting fucking honest and I was trying shit at a high level. And then I was getting the results that step 10 promised. And then once I understood step 10 more, then I followed more of the practical application. It really helped me out a lot. And what I've noticed in the program, here's part of the watered down bullshit. Nobody understands step 10, including old timers. And a lot of people do not understand what step 10 is. They think that it's promptly admitting that I'm wrong. No, it fucking ain't. Or they think that I do nightly inventory at the end of the day and I look at where I could have done better. That's not step 10 either. That's step 11. So when you understand step 10 and we carry that message into the program, into the meetings, then we can really make a big difference. And that step is the one that helps change the psychic change. So that's why I'm so adamant about the directions, especially step 10, because it'll change your life, man. It's a game changer. Anything before we go?
No.
Okay. So this thought brings us to step 10. I want you to underline all the continues in this paragraph. We continue to take personal inventory. We continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced, underline that, this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered into the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God to remove them at once. We discuss them with somebody immediately, and we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. So there's 4 continues in that paragraph. And when you look up continue, it means fucking do it. Over and over and over and over, right? And then it says we vigorously commenced this way of living. So we vigorously commenced to live this way as we're cleaning up the last of our amends. You know, maybe you got 5 or 10 amends done And your sponsor is getting you right into step 10. That's what it's saying. As you're cleaning up the past with your amends, you vigorously commence this way of living. And then as you get to the little bit into the paragraph, this is not an overnight matter. Doesn't happen overnight, takes time. And it should continue for our lifetime. Meaning we do this for the rest of our lives. This process right here that we're going to describe. And if you have a pen and you don't have this marked up in your book, I'm going to give you the markups before I read it again. There'll be 5 of them. So you'll put a little baby number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a certain spot in your book. And this will be really important. So before the word continue to watch, right before continue, you put a little baby number 1. Watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, you can put the baby number 2 after up. Before we ask God to remove them. After them, before we discuss, put a baby number 3. Discuss them with somebody immediately. And after and before make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. After anyone, before then, put a baby number 5. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Also, on top of numbering that, underline it or highlight it and make sure that it sticks out. Because that little piece is the piece that'll change your life. Does anyone need me to say that? Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is what we do. This is your practical application of the steps in your program, in your life. You're going to be thinking, you're going to be aware of what you're thinking and what you're feeling. You got to be aware, because without awareness of your thoughts, you don't have anything to go with. And as soon as you're aware, now top priority is a willingness. So now willingness takes top priority as soon as you're aware, okay? And this is where step 6 comes in. Any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6 on all his faults without reservation has indeed come a long way spiritually. So as you look at this step 10, we continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Boom, that's the first step. I'm aware. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Okay. When these crop up, not if, when, because they will crop up, especially when you're learning this process, because your old patterns and habits and coping mechanisms are always going to try to come up and try to create your failure again. So we got to be aware. And then when they crop up, boom, now we're willing. I fucking see it. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to ask God to remove it right now. Boom, on the spot. Okay. And then what does it say? Then it says we discuss them with somebody fucking immediately. It doesn't say we wait for a week till I'm meeting my sponsor, or 2 weeks, or 3 days. It says immediately. And especially for you newer people who are scared to reach out, like me and Janine and other people who have like practice, who used to be scared to reach out because of our pride. No, I don't want to bother him, he's busy. No, man. That's why you have God-centered 12-step pillars that you can call, because you might not be able to get a hold of your sponsor or the other person, but eventually you'll find somebody. But don't call somebody who's on step 4, who's on step 6, who's fucking new to the program, because they're going to give you the same answers as what you've been living with. You need somebody who's God-centered, 12-step, and who's working these steps in this program, so they can give you a totally different perspective on what your situation is. Like, for example, if I'm new and I call a buddy, down the road who's on step 4, and I ask him, fuck, this is what's happening. I found this money on the ground and I'm fucking broke. He'd be like, dude, no one's around, just keep it. I'd be like, fuck, sounds good, man. That's not what we're looking for. We don't want to be working with people who are going to cater to our already defective relations with ourselves and with others. Now I call like my sponsor and he says, dude, where's the nearest store? Go take that wallet into the store and give it to them. And, you know, maybe put an anonymous post on Facebook and say, you know, you found this wallet by the store and you know what's in it. And then they can describe what was in the wallet. You can give it back. And if no one takes it within like 2 months or whatever, bro, maybe you can give it away to somebody or you can keep it, right? At least I'm getting some tangible evidence on like a real solution that has spiritual value in it. Okay. So we discussed it with somebody immediately, whatever it is. And then it says, we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. The chances are, if you're following this process, if you're in resentment, selfishness, dishonesty, or fear, you follow the process. If you harmed anyone, you're probably not going to harm anyone because you're going to already have taken preventative steps to the harm. And then at the end, it says, we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. The word resolutely is really important. I want you to circle it or underline it or something, and then I want you to look it up. I'll tell you what it means. It means in an admirably purposeful, determined, and unwavering manner. You pray for somebody else. You turn your thoughts to somebody else. And what does that look like? It looks like, don't pray for them for 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Pray for somebody else, whoever the resentment is against, or you have a whole list in your head of people who need prayers. You pray for them for at least a fucking minute. Go for a minute, because that prayer hits your subconscious so deep that it changes you on the inside. So as we look at that whole process again, you start out with the problem of selfish self-centeredness. Now you're ending off with the problem of others, or the solution of others, I should say, not problem. But that little piece right there, in anything that you're doing in your day and in your life, will change your fucking life. If you're willing to, if you're aware and you're willing and you're fucking honest. And the honesty part comes in when you're making the call, right? Because you can rationalize and justify the most errant bullshit to suit your actions or your inaction. But when you call somebody God-centered 12-step, they're going to see this from a totally different perspective. In the step 4, it said this is a fact-finding, fact-facing process. I'm going to look at the facts and I'm going to face the facts of this given situation with an effort to discover the truth about stock in trade. I'm going to find out the truth based on somebody else's perspective of stock in trade. Because my perspective is always based in selfishness and self-delusion. And one effort is to find damaged and unsaleable goods and discard them promptly without regret. So then my person that I call helps me find this damaged and unsaleable good and discard it promptly without regret. And it's kind of like working a step 4, where you're working in the resentment. You look for your part, you're finding out what it hurts. You're looking at your part only. You're looking at the fear. You're looking at your conduct, your relationship conduct. And that other person on the phone is able to help you navigate all those columns that are way back in the step 4, but it's right now on the fly. And then as you discuss it with him, you're doing a step 5. And then as he gives you guidance and you maybe feel and see the guidance, fuck, I gotta change this and I gotta do something different. Now you're willing to try something different and go to God and ask God for the removal to help you with that. And then he says, okay, now go make the amend because you were the asshole. And like, I'm not willing. Fuck, why would I do that? And then, yeah, I see the truth and now I'm willing. And then I go make the amend. And then what? It goes pretty good. And then I drive away in my car from that situation, and what happens? I don't carry it with me. I'm clear. I can wait for the next version of self to creep up so I can do that whole process again, and then I do it again, and then what happens? I leave that situation and I left it behind me. What does all this leaving it behind me do? Keeps me fucking present. Keeps me connected. There's one who has all knowledge and power. That one is God. You must find him now. It's only right now that God exists. And you can't be carrying shit over and living with the best of intention and just thinking that it doesn't matter, because it all matters. And then if you practice this enough, you'll just be like, whoa, fuck. Like, here's a good example. I sit with my old lady when we first got together, and we'd be sitting there and she's like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, nothing. She's like, come on. I'm like, no, my brain's blank. She's like, she didn't believe me. And like, honestly, my brain was blank. It just didn't have any thoughts in it. And, you know, maybe to some people who are used to always fucking working in their mind and always have something to say or to think about or to criticize or whatever, maybe that seems like totally weird, which does, because I used to be like that. But now it's kind of weird to just sit there and have nothing happen in my brain. And then I'm like, fuck, maybe I'm a boring boyfriend. Because I don't want to. I don't want to. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like you mentioned, the fact finding and fact facing, and that is how you grow in effectiveness and understanding. So that's the goal. It's like you want to continue to be looking at the facts and facing them, because that is how we're growing in effectiveness and understanding. We need to understand ourselves. We need to understand, why are we getting this stuff coming up? Where is it coming from? What is the root of the issue? What do we need to do to resolve that to be more effective? And then I just wanted to add a little bit about like the step 10 process isn't just exclusive to you picking up the phone and making a phone call. A lot of the step 10s that I've been doing lately have been just in everyday interactions where I notice somebody starts to move in. I notice some of these things cropping up for the person, and then I will say something like, hey, sounds like do you want to do a quick step 10 on this? And then getting them to be looking at it in a step 10, I think is super helpful, because like sometimes people just don't know, and if you can pick it out and be supportive in that, and then you can, you know, be on a walk and you can do a step 10, or you can be out for coffee and see somebody kind of starting to spin out, and then use that as an opportunity to do a step 10 and, you know, do the exact same thing, the exact same process, and talk to somebody immediately. And what I've known, like for myself, like I've had the most recent one for me, I got defensive. So like, because it was not me making the phone call, but a friend, the pillar, saw me being resentful and that was coming up, and said, okay, like, you know, let's work this out. And I think like the love and tolerance is our code is put at the end of that paragraph. It's like, remember, love and, because that's what I have to do, is like, love and tolerance is the code. I need to work this out immediately. And like, because my defensiveness felt strong. And then, you know, just in looking at this, like, love and tolerance is the code. Like, that's what we're trying to do here. There's no need to be defensive, because if I am, like, I can't change anything there. Like the key to the freedom that I desire is through my own part, and to look at that part, and through my own fact facing process and discarding of those unsalvageable goods. That is how I continue to move towards the freedom that I want. So it's like, how free do you want to be? Well, I want to be as free as I can be. So I need to be willing to do that. So just knowing that you can definitely say, hey, do you want to step 10 around this? And, you know, sometimes there's defensiveness, but I think that if you ask like in a lighthearted way, it seems to go over good. And it's a really good opportunity right in lifetime to address some of those things for someone.
So now, just kind of like on the aspect of how do we self-will these principles into our affairs? Okay, someone does a set of steps, they don't have these numbers numbered, they don't have it highlighted, they don't understand step 10 on the practical application. They've read through the material and they've done their steps, and you know, a situation arises and they're living in fear. Let's say my daughter is, you know, annoying me and she's living in her own fears, and then I'm allowing fear and I have anxiety. And then I just go, okay, I'm supposed to be compassionate here. So I'm just start being compassionate, and I just start telling her, you know what, it's going to be okay. And you know what, don't worry about your ex-boyfriend and, you know, his bullshit. He really was an asshole. And, you know, and I just keep catering to her shit. So now I'm self-willing the principle of compassion into her life, into my life. And I don't really resolve anything within me, and I sure don't resolve anything within her as somebody who could be a ripple effect of something positive. I'm just manifesting, creating more self-pity and more blame and more everything. And then as I do that on a self-will basis, I actually start believing it because I'm teaching my subconscious that that's okay to roll like that. But so we don't want to self-will the principles into our affairs. Or I'm supposed to be honest here. And then we try to go, okay, now I'm honest. But I'm honest from a place of where I don't want conflict. And I'm not standing in my truth. So I never really get the benefit of like easing my mind from the conflict within, because I never approached it in a authentic, truthful manner. I just thought I was doing us both a favor by avoiding the conflict, because one of my defects is I don't like to have conflict with other people.
Forgiveness is one I see all the time, that it's like, I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to turn the other cheek, you know, and things go good for a minute and then something happens. And then it's like all of the things come back because they were never addressed in the first place. They were just stuffed and kind of like, you know, do, and they're never gone. So if you're trying to forgive somebody, just like with your own mind, the chances of that actually being effective are so slim to none. Bryn, is your hand up?
Hi. So when you're talking about that situation with your daughter, just for me personally, it's like, when do you you feel that fear coming up and you recognize it, but you don't want to feed into her fear? Like, how do you address your fear while still trying to address hers? Or like, how does that go?
Okay, here's how that goes. So when we look at selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, back in step 4, I have a process to deal with resentment. I have 4 columns, and if this resentment keeps bothering me, then I gotta fucking put pen to paper and I gotta write down the name, what they're doing to me, how it affects me, and what's my part in it. And we also have an inventory that deals with fear. We write down our fears. We ask why we had them. Wasn't it because we place self-reliance first and we're not relying on God? Then we ask God to remove the fear and ask him to direct our attention to what he would have us be. And then we be the principle of what God would have us be. And that's the process. So when you're dealing with fear, you have a fear-based process in the step 4. So you might have to go do that. And as you do that, okay, what's the fear? My daughter, this, here's what it affects. It's affecting like maybe your emotional security or blah, blah, blah. You know, maybe you have a resentment against her with her own fear. Maybe there's a resentment that needs to be dealt with there too. But then you direct your attention to what God would have you be. He has you be kind, compassionate, loving, courageous. And you might have to pull on this power to find those answers, because we can't always give you the answers. We can give you the direction, we can give you some advice, but you have to pull on that power through your own intuition and your guidance system that says, this is how I have to handle this. And maybe you got to tell her a truth that you never would have before. Right? So there's no like clear-cut answer, but
So he's saying that instead of just saying, I'm going to blank, it's like, I'm going to try and do the process. So take action to it and unpack it. And like when he was describing you go back to the 4 and you write out, why did we have these fears? I had a similar thing happen with my daughter not too long ago, same type of thing. And then I actually took that one to you and unpacked it. And through that, he validated, like, you know, it might feel really fearful, but you don't know the end result. You have to let your kids be. And he just kind of talked into me what I already knew, but it was helpful because it was someone else outside of me. And I knew what I was afraid of, and I kind of knew, you know, but having another person and then speaking it out as well. And then that's kind of like gave me the, yeah, okay, this is what I need to do. And then actually in that same situation, I had a hard conversation with her where I said some things that were not so friendly, but really effective. And I would say our relationship took a big shift in that way, but it took like me sorting it out for myself, me relying on a couple pillars actually, and then me having a hard conversation. And so in that hard conversation, I kind of talked about the book stuff with her, and just reinforced that I love her, but I can't just keep, you know, whatever her shit was. I can't keep, letting her do her shit, because that's not me being the best parent for her. I have to like actually show her where she might need to take a better look and stop blaming. And the result was really good. In the end, the thing I feared didn't actually come to be. And that was where we had left it too, is that, you don't know what's going to happen, and there's no sense fearing something that it hasn't even happened yet. So a lot of that comes from like talking to pillars and just getting your thoughts straight and feeling supported and understood.
So we have an inventory with resentment and fear. That's way back in the 4. So if you're still struggling in a 10, concurrently with one of those, you've got to process to deal with them. And talking to somebody else will also you got selfishness and dishonesty, but we don't fully have inventory processes for selfishness, the cunning kind that's kind of below the surface, or dishonesty, which is also the cunning kind and it's below the surface. How do we dissect and extract those? We have to talk to somebody, and we have long talks, and then the stuff comes out. And you can't be hiding shit, but sometimes we do hide shit, even when we're trying to be forthright, because the subconscious, where everything kind of is controlled, it still wants to hide that because of my pride or whatever it might be. So we combat those other two, selfishness and dishonesty, with God-centered 12-step pillars, with our sponsors. And we talk that stuff out, and then that stuff will reveal itself. And a lot of people will think that they can do a lot of this on their own, but that's not what we do. That's not what it says. So I want you, if you can, before we stop for break, just to go to page 60 in your 12 and 12. And if you don't have it, or it's not open and you don't want to open it, I'll just read it. This is a step 5 portion of the 12 and 12 on page 60, which is, that's a step 5 portion in the big book on when you discuss them with somebody immediately. That's kind of like the step 5 portion in that mini set of steps that you're doing on the fly. The second difficulty is this: what comes to us alone may be garbled by our own rationalization and wishful thinking. The benefit of talking to another person is that we can get his direct comment and counsel on our situation. And there can be no doubt in our minds what that advice is. Going at it alone in spiritual matters is dangerous. I love that line. Because everything in our lives is a spiritual matter, and going at it alone is dangerous. How many times have we heard well-intentioned people claim the guidance of God when it was all too plain that they were sorely mistaken? Lacking both practice, and humility, they had diluted themselves and were able to justify the most errant nonsense on the ground that this is what God had told them. It is worth noting, this is important, that people of very high spiritual development almost always insist on checking with friends or spiritual advisors the guidance they feel they have received from God. Surely then, a novice ought not lay himself open to the chance of making foolish, perhaps tragic blunders in this fashion. While the comment or advice of others may be by no means infallible, it is likely to be far more specific than any direct guidance we may receive while we are so still inexperienced in establishing a contact with a power greater than ourselves. It kind of says it all right there. Okay. So something that just came to me a second ago was a lot of us are in relationships. And as we follow this process in relationships, we got to be careful about always like speaking our truth in the relationship. So there's a balance to all this, right? That's where your God-centered 12-step pillars really come in. So as we encounter difficulties in our intimate relationships, some of the times we think that we should have this talk right now and get this dealt with right now. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think we attack these relationship problems on the flank with our sponsor, because our sponsor can help us see something a little different and give us an approach that may be more conducive to love and tolerance of the other, and standing in our own truth and finding that balance.
In the same way that you would get advice about an amends, like the timing of an amends and how to go about that, where you're able to speak your part, but also respect the other person in the timing that you do that.
100%. And that's where I stole it from. I stole it from the step 9. But I find, like, I was in a relationship where she would always want to like talk about it right now, and it was always my fault and all this shit. And I was just like, I need time and I need to talk to my sponsor. And then because I was in such a fear of losing the relationship, I had to talk. And then it fucking just got worse, and it never got better. It got better when we broke up. And it's been great ever since.
Okay, so
And that breaking up part was really fucking hard. I didn't want to do it, but I knew I had to do it. Why? Because my core of my being knew, but my ego wanted to stay attached. But I had to finally listen to the spirit that knew what was right. And my sponsor knew, and all my friends knew, but it was so fucking hard. But it was one of the greatest teachings of my recovery so far. And that was just a few years ago. And I'm still learning from that one. So as we get to the bottom of that 5-step process, and that is step 10, all the rest of the stuff that we're going to read, it's not the actual step 10. It's results that come from doing what we're talking about here. Okay. And then it says love and tolerance of others as our code. Through the practical application of that 5-part series right there, love and tolerance of others will become the code. And when you look at the word tolerance, tolerance has a foundation of love built into it. A lot of people, when you ask them about tolerance, they're like, they kind of have the idea that it means to tolerate. Well, if that's what it takes to start, so sometimes it's hate and tolerate before it's love and tolerance. But we kind of just keep doing this process, and slowly it chips away at that old foundation of self. And then we begin to actually start loving ourselves, and we begin to see these same flaws in other people who are also emotionally ill, spiritually sick, and frequently wrong, just like us. And then we really can expand. And I want to touch on something that Dale texted in the chat. He had written, I'm just going to pull it up here, or just using acceptance to move past a person, place, or thing. So a lot of in the program you hear, oh, I just accepted, or I just moved on, or I just let it go. The actual reality of just accepting shit and letting it go is very slim. Through the practical application of doing this, you can slowly accept it. The mind always wants to accept it because other people are doing it, and it makes sense that I should accept it and let it go. But that's not how this actually works. It works when the fucking insides, the deep insides of you have let it go. And you will know the change in that because you will know the word serenity, and you will know peace, and you will have no discord for them anymore. And you'll know when you know, and you'll probably have let it go at that point. And it usually takes time, whatever it is, with whoever it is. And as you practice this more and more, you can let that shit go as it goes. And the biggest component, I think, in my life, in order for that to happen, it's worked through sponsorship, because I've been able to see through sponsorship where everyone's instincts are driving their defects, and then they're the reflection of me. So I can see the exact same things in them as me. I'm looking at myself, I'm talking to myself, I'm listening to myself. My heart's opening, their heart's opening, truth is happening, and we fucking can actually love each other and not hate each other. Or he may still hate me, but I don't hate him.
Dale has a question.
Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. Just that came up for me this week. We were talking about like mainstream stuff or whatever, and I just had to come to the part where I realized, like, right next to that, and acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. Right next to that is where it says, you know, until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. So that to me is applying to the defects. Until I accept these defects and work through them, it's not like, I'm not gonna stay sober. I'm not gonna get past that defect, right? That's why I put that in there.
Dude, that's such a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Because until we accept that part of us, and in that acceptance of that part of us, there's probably some humiliation there and there's some pain. But you can't grow out of that until you've accepted it. Exactly the same with alcohol. Until I accept my alcoholism, I couldn't work in a solution. Until I accept my anger, until I accept my lust, and but really those are layers of deeper rooted shit. And as I keep working this step, I get to the deeper layers and levels of acceptance. And then I'm like Janine said when she prayed, she talked about it's more of a journey and an adventure than it is the fear. Because the humility lies within the humiliation and the dirt and all the fucking dirt that covers up whatever it is. And as you blow up and all that dirt gets moved, you find that little piece of humility, that little diamond, but you got to accept it first. And that's why rigorous honesty is in how it works, because rigorous means accurate. You got to get honest, not with them, with yourself. So like, for example, at 4 years in, I can think that I'm all spiritual and I'm running the best program. But when I get real honest, I got to go, fuck, why are you still angry? And why are you still resentful? And then I got to talk about those things with my sponsor. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And get real honest with them. And I still do that today with my sponsor. I meet him on a regular basis. And he tells me shit I don't want to hear still. But that's how it goes.
And I think too, like when you were saying that, Dale, it's like until we accepted our alcoholism, well, part of that is that we accepted that to drink is to die, like that this was something that we're contending with, like something that's going to kill us. And the book says the same about our defects. And so accepting our defects are like, grave and will take us out if we're not careful. So accepting them is the way to move forward, but not accepting them just, hey, this is just me. It's like accepting them as, if I don't rid myself of this shit, it could kill me.
100%. Okay, let's keep going. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For this time, sanity will have returned. We will be seldom interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I'm going to stop there. So as we kind of look at these promises, now these are the step 10 promises. Primarily when you go to the meetings and you hear people talk about the step 10 promises, they're talking about exactly what this says, okay? I'll talk about what this exactly says, and then I'll talk about the deeper level of what it's saying. So we cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. And why do we cease fighting alcohol? Because we're not conflicted within our own mind anymore. How do we become not conflicted within our own mind anymore? We followed this process, this 5-step process, and it actually keeps that channel clear. You might have to follow this process 25, 100 times in a day. But if you follow this process, you're going to keep that channel clear and you're going to be present and be able to have God right here and now and start working with God here and now. For this time, sanity will have returned, meaning you're not picking up the drink. Way back in There's a Solution, it talks about when thousands of experience has shown him that another debacle or picking up the drink brings pain and suffering or whatever it says. Why does he pick up the first drink? whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. You know, picking up the drink, knowing what always happens, we pick it up. That's insanity. So as we follow this process, we can be restored to sanity. We'll have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor because we're not creating the malady in our mind anymore. We recoil from it as from a hot flame. Think about that. Recoiling from a hot flame, like even if it's there, it's like, whoa, no, I don't even want that shit. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. It doesn't even take your effort, really. It takes your effort to work the program, but the removal of the obsession, it happens automatically. We will see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. So I'm not going, fuck, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm going to avoid the bars. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. And like, in a sense, I'm thinking about drinking. If I'm not thinking about drinking, I'm thinking about drinking, right? We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off of drinking. Instead, the problem has been removed. Boom, gone. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Okay, that's with the drink. But I want to take this to a different level. So what do I struggle with? Struggle with anger. Struggle with lust. Anger and lust are headline symptoms of emotional insecurity. But I got to start with the headlines. So when I'm walking through the step 10 process, fuck, I realize I'm angry. I fucking ask God to remove it. I talk to somebody, I find out some more, and then I slowly get down the layers. I resolutely turn my thoughts to someone I can help. I've now built some compassion. Now I'm fucking healing these layers of anger, which is actually usually emotional security, things that we didn't get in our lives that we're trying to grasp for, okay? And then for this time, the sanity will have returned. The sanity is me turning over my defect. And then over time, I don't go into that anger. Maybe it slowly goes to a frustration only. And then maybe it goes to actually compassion. We will seldom be interested in anger. We will seldom be interested in lust. We will seldom be interested in judgment or gambling or whatever it might be. Okay. So a big one here that we didn't talk about much today is relationships. Okay. As I live in the restless irritable discontent, which is the malady, which is self, I will often jump into a relationship, and relationships give me the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once. But as I practice this set of 5 steps, when I'm trying to like work on myself and I get kind of pulled towards another relationship, because that's always given me the ease and comfort, I now talk to somebody and they kind of talk me off that ledge, and I follow back into this process, and I'm seldom interested in the relationship because I see the pattern. That's the insanity. After fucking 35 relationships and I'm 35 years old and none of them worked out, for me to get in another one today, 3 months since my last one, that's fucking insanity. So I'm able to stop that. Okay. And I can be restored to sanity and not jump into that again, whatever the defect is. Okay. Because ultimately that's what we're working on. We will seldom be interested in our defect. If tempted, we recoil as from a hot flame. So the recoiling from a hot flame from the defect will come later as you work this 5-step process. Or pride, or like me needing to speak up and fucking tell you how it is. Like that might take self-restraint at first. Maybe if you're fucking, prone to, sex relations and getting relief out of sex relations, maybe you recoil as that from a hot flame after a while, but it's really fucking strong at first. So it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort to fucking do this stuff. That's why I said you got to do what's fucking hard. Everyone else is going to keep doing that, but you can't, and you don't want to. But really, when you're doing this work and you see everyone else still kind of seemingly getting what they want, maybe Buddy's even getting it with no consequences. And like, where's his consequences? He's being a piece of shit. It doesn't matter. we do it, because they will never experience the benefit that we will. And this is a long game, and you don't even know what the benefit is, because the experience of God in this can't be intellectualized. It's an experience that you can only feel when you get down the road as you let it go. And the letting go, like I said, doesn't come just because you resisted a few chicks for a little while. It comes through a willingness to really care about other people and to care about yourself and follow this path for some time. Okay. And then you react sanely and normally. And we will find that this has happened automatically. So today, I don't rage out. I'm not lustful. I'm not saying that I don't have, thoughts of like, fuck, people pissing me off, or that I don't find women attractive or whatever. I'm not saying that. But I'm not acting, I'm not making my life or anyone's life unmanageable because of it. And the more that I'm aware of that, the more that I pray for God to allow me to treat this woman like a human being. And like it, over time, it kind of works, right? We will see that our new attitude towards women, towards men, towards gambling, towards sex, towards porn, whatever your defects are, has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, nor are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality. So when you work this step 10, you get placed in a position of neutrality right here. It's neutral. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not forward. It's not backwards. It's not anything. It's just good. And when you're placed in a position of neutrality and you're okay with you, you can put yourself into society and you're placed in a position of neutrality in society. And then this is where tradition 10 really steps in. Tradition 10 becomes a part of your life when you've worked this step enough. What is tradition 10? AA has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought not be drawn into public controversy. So as you work the step 10, at some point, you will have no opinion on what other people are doing. And you're okay with whatever they're doing, and that's their journey, and that's totally okay. Hence, because of that, you don't get drawn into their controversy. So your opinion doesn't matter in their life, and you're not drawn into other people's drama because of their trauma. And you can stay in this position of neutrality. And I have people come to me all the time from all over the place asking me for help. I just help them based in my consciousness with God. And I don't get pulled into fucking people's shit. It's really fucking wild, man. Like, I can't even believe, like, this is an example. So the last week I've had 2 couples who were, thinking about, not staying together. And I got a call from each of the guys, and then I got calls from the wife. And normally I would only take calls from the guys, but in both these circumstances, I thought it was okay because they're all in the program. They're already working their program pretty solidly. And all I was doing is I wasn't giving advice. All I do is I try to get people to listen to that voice inside of them and fucking follow that. So I'm not drawn into anyone's controversy over anything, because I'm just trying to help you come up with your own decisions based on your relationship with the power of your God. And I don't need to give much for direction. I might give my advice a little bit if they ask, but anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that in step 6, it talks about, the idea that we're gonna now take what we did in step 1 with the alcohol and start the process of that being removed, the obsession to be removed. It says, why can't we now apply this to our defects? And so that's what this is talking about. And it's like, we've ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, but it's like past alcohol. It's like alcohol was the beginning. And then if we apply it to our defects, like Bo was just explaining, the sanity will be removed and we will recoil from our defects in the same way, because step 6 tells us that's exactly what we're here to do. In step 6, we're supposed to be like, alcohol is but a symptom. It's like the beginning. It's really not even anything. It's like why we came to the program. but really it's about the defects. And step 6 says that it's like, now the miracle, if it wasn't proof enough that the alcoholic just had the obsession to be removed, like that's a miracle and that's proof enough. So why can we not now just apply this to the defects? And the answer is, well, we can. And then here's how. And so this is the process right before that. The step 10 process is, here's how we're going to apply the same idea to the defects through this step 10 process. And we will cease fighting anything and everyone, because we've been working ourselves out in this process and healing. And it's like we lose interest in other things. And it's like, I've lost interest in the drama, but I will say like that there are things like the thing that just happened recently where something affected a friend of ours. And it's like, that's something that after some decision, it's worth taking a stand on and speaking up. So it's not like, well, I'm just like, everything is just because there are times when you do gotta, speak up, but you have that clarity over when you actually need to speak up. And I'm not running around just speaking up and dying on all these hills now. Now I have a kind of a very small threshold of what I need to stick up for in my opinion of other people's stuff. And it's when people have sought me out, or like I've, talked to a pillar about it, and it really is something that somebody needs some help with. And so it's not just, we don't care about anything anymore. It's like, we don't get worked up over the drama, but we also still, we hold to our truth. And sometimes that looks like, getting involved if it means that, it's going to be helpful in some way. Right. And so, which is far and few between now for me. And there was a time that I was going through something with a sponsee. It was the beginning of our working relationship. She was the first sponsee that I had. So I think she's only maybe a month behind me. And it was right out of the treatment center, and we were working together, and it was a odd combination, I'll say. And there was a lot of different societal views that were coming out in our relationship of just like the culture stuff and social norms and some things that, and like, it wasn't even really identified, but it was very, very strange. All of the societal drama around, us and them, and just different ways that society tries to split us apart and make us different. So that was kind of surfacing a bit. And it was, something that we both kind of went to Bill with, and he said, you're fighting because the fight's in here. So you're fighting out here. And it just clicked for both of us. It was like, well, holy shit, that is so true. Like, so true that all of the beliefs that we were like taking on as our own, we didn't even feel that way. It was like, we were listening to society tell us how we should think, and this was unfair and that wasn't right, and this and that. And then we were kind of coming at each other and not even really knowing, like, it was kind of this subconscious, like, weird thing that was happening. And he said that, and both of us were just like, holy shit. And we were kind of like almost freed from it in that moment, because we could see it. Like, it was like, we're fighting ourselves with all this stuff. And it's like, if we can navigate that, it's not about us at all. And so now today, it's like, we look back on that and laugh, but it was it was a big deal at the time, and it was very confusing. And I always think of this line now when I'm like having an issue with something outside of me. It's like, what is going on? And, step 10 will continue to talk about this with the spiritual axiom. But it's like, when I'm disturbed about something out here, the fight is in me, something that needs to be resolved within me. And when you know that, it's like, hey, you can be free like that if you want to.
Yeah, fucking perfect. And whenever you're not free, you got to think about the belief. What belief is behind why I believe this should be a certain way? Because any resentment or fear or discontentment, it always is based in an ideal or a belief system that something outside of you is not living up to. So if you can go inside and go, what belief am I living in? Where did I get it? How did I get it? Where did it come from? And why do I even need it? And then dismantle that to the point where it doesn't even fucking really matter most of the time, right? So anyway, middle of the page, 85. Every day is a day where we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How do we do that? Step 10. The step 10, you will carry the vision of God's will into your activities. What happens when you do that step 10 is you take away your will, you identify your will, and you leave the results up to God. So it's like, it's not a matter of like trying to practice the principles in your affairs. You don't really need to. You just follow the process, you identify your will, and you follow the process, and then you leave it up to God. The problem is a lot of what activates this process is exterior, and what you're not going to get, or what you're trying to get, or what you're going to lose. And then you activate the process, and then you're not going to get what it is that you think you wanted. That's kind of what happens. But through not getting what you want, now you're practicing character building spiritual value principles. And you may feel like you got a raw deal or whatever, but what you're getting taught here is you're seeking humility as something to be desired. So you're learning through the pain, you're learning through not getting it, you're learning through the pain of fucking rejection or not getting what it is that you think you want. And when we talk about humility in this program, it's humiliation, humbled through pain, and a desire to seek and do God's will. You know you did what was right, but it doesn't feel right because you're not getting what you think you deserve. That doesn't matter. You bring the vision of God's will, which is here, into all of your activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts of which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. So it's saying we align our will with God's will, and it's the proper use of our will. We align our will. We align our personalities. So like in the program, everyone's like, oh, you can't be like this and you can't be like that. And oh, that's fucking all ego. Well, the program's about personalities in a sense, because it's the personalities that other people kind of get attracted to, right? And so I'll just use me. I'm a certain kind of personality. So I've tried to align how I am with God's will, but I still kind of stay with some of the traits that God gave me as a human. And now I use them as an asset, right? And like, I'm very serious and I'm very blunt and straightforward. I used to use that in a total negative in my life. And now I can use it as a positive, right? I often swear, and I'll make up words like alcoholic, and that's part of my personality, right? I use swear words as like mid-sentence and mid-word, and people like that, or they don't. But the thing that I've learned here is I ain't talking to everybody anyway. I'm only talking to the ones that are listening. And we are also doing that when we're carrying our message. You're not talking to everybody. Not everyone's going to listen, but you're talking to the one person or 10 people or 20 people that are going to listen. That's important. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who has all knowledge and power. What is that line saying? It says much has already been said in the first 85 pages plus the doctor's opinion of this book. It's already been said about how to receive strength, inspiration, and direction from God, who has all knowledge and power. And I love that. He's got the knowledge, because there's a intuitive knowing and knowledge within us, and God is within us. He's just covered up by all the bullshit, by the resentments and the fear and the discontentment and the rage, and it's covered up. But when we can tap into that knowledge, that's why we don't have to figure it out with the mind anymore. But in order to not figure it out with the mind, we have to follow the step 10 process, because it clears the heart off. And it allows that heart to open up. So then I can use that unsuspected inner resource. I got this version of the source that's outside of me, and I can start relying on the intuitive knowledge that I have. And when I can tap into that and let that guide me, it's never let me down. And that power. And then it says something really important. If we have carefully followed what? Fucking directions. Directions, man. If we have carefully followed these directions in step 10, that sometimes takes us back to step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Then what happens? We have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. There's a promise. If I follow these directions, I will begin to sense the flow of God into me. And to some extent, I become God conscious. because I'm now connecting with God in every circumstance, in all of my activities. I'm bringing God, the vision of God's will, into everything I do. So I start walking hand in hand with my Creator, and I develop God consciousness. What used to be a hunch or occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of my mind, and I come to rely upon it, just like it talks about in step 11. We have begun to develop this vital means important, but I think at this point of the game, it means fucking vitality. It means I've begun to develop this vital, this like life-giving sixth sense that allows me not to get exhausted and burn my life out by trying to figure out life, because I don't need to anymore. Because I can rely on pillars, I can rely on my intuition, I can rely on these processes, and then my life starts getting good and I have a reason to live that has nothing to do with alcohol or fucking defects of character. I feel a zest for life. But we must go further, and that means more action. So as I've cleared this channel, I've begun to get this vital sixth sense, this God consciousness. I feel the flow of His Spirit into me. Now I need more action. And then it goes on to say, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy in this matter of prayer. Better men than us have been using it constantly. It works when we have the proper attitude. The attitude that we have at this stage of the game is God. The most profound result of all is the change in our attitude towards God, because we've been going to God in any given circumstance whenever something crops up. And then, so like I share this quite often, because people don't know what step 10 is. They just run their life with the best of intention. Meanwhile, self's getting piled all over their heart. They're not clear. There's no channel. They're still trying to figure shit out. They think they hear God, but they just hear their fucking fears. There's a fine line between fucking intuition based in a fear and intuition based in love and God consciousness. Most people live on the first one, the intuition based in fear and old subconscious patterns. And then, because they don't fear the channel, they're living in a theory of God. God's just a theory, because how could God be anything else when He's so covered up? So then when they do prayer and meditation, they don't get the full value out of prayer and meditation, because they're not actually clear to hear what God is saying, or the connection that needs to be open there. So out of a scale of 1 to 10, they might be getting a 1 out of 10 or a half of a point out of 10 out of a step 11 maximum. And when you clear that channel, you can get the full 10 out of 10 on step 11 and more, because God is infinite, but you got to keep the channel clear. So I'll finish with this. When we talk about spirituality, we talk about spiritual. The rituals are the things that we do over and over and over. And step 10 is a ritual. And through the rituals that we do, including prayer and meditation and inventory and all the things, then we become spiritual. And when we fall off the beam like we do, we can still do the rituals. And through the hard times that pushes us closer to God, because sometimes we are going to rest on our laurels. And we know we're heading for trouble if we do, because we got barometers on the page 52, step 0 promises, and the step 9 promises. We got some barometers here. So we know that we've been resting on our laurels or becoming complacent. The definition of complacency means to be self-satisfied with one's life. No, we move forward past that, and we keep gaining in traction with more God. Anything else to finish this off?
I will say that the thing that blocked my channel the most when I look back was the dishonesty. I was dishonest in so many areas, like my relationships. I couldn't really talk about them honestly, and what I was doing in my spare time, which was getting drunk every day. I couldn't talk about that honestly, but the resentments, I was not talking about those. I was people pleasing to the beyond, like I was people pleasing to the degree that I didn't even know that I was saying yes and no, and I was so confused. I didn't know myself. I thought I was authentic. I was pretty messed up. And so once I learned to practiced this stuff and I felt my channel getting clear, it felt like the overanalyzing was removed. That was like a huge plague for me. My first like round of AA, I got sober in AA, not really doing the steps properly and not really understanding what I was doing, but I stayed sober for some years. And people would always tell me, like, you're over analyzing. That's going to take, you're too smart for AA. And I never understood that. And I didn't see how it was related. And now I see it like so much in like when other people are overthinking just like the most basic things. It's like, oh, I used to do that. And it used to just like block me like no other, because I was so busy thinking about every little thing. It's like, well, if I say this, then they might be mad. And if I say that, then they might be like this. So maybe I'll just like, so now as a rule, what I learned to do is don't do anything that I can't just speak honestly about. If there's any part of what I'm doing that I can't just say to my friend or my child or whatever, that this is what I'm doing, then I cannot be doing it, because that clogged me up more than anything that I can identify. So today, if I'm doing anything, it's like things that like, and he was big on this in my early days. It was like, the truth needs no justification. And I would be squeamish about like canceling a job interview or speaking to my landlord about the damage deposit and telling her what I was doing. And like, I like all these things that were coming up, and my tendency was to lie. And I saw how dishonest I was and what a mess, what a web of confusion I was always making with things that did not have to be confusing. And Bill would say, like, the truth doesn't need to be justified. So if you're doing something that is true for you and like based in like your authentic self through God in this moment, and like, and it's not shady and it's not, and I know when those things are, like, if I'm doing something that I cannot just say this is what I'm doing, I will not be doing it. So like that, and whether I'm like, whether I'm right or wrong in the moment, like I'll be able to look back and be like, well, maybe, you know, but in the moment, I'm not doing anything that I feel I need to lie or feel like I'm doing something wrong or harming. And that has produced the most results for feeling like there's a clear channel. And yeah, so I guess I would just add that self-deception piece and the over analyzing, like that is so unnecessary. Because if you're just thinking about like people pleasing, and you're scared to speak up because this, and you want to say this so that you don't hurt this, and all of that is just so much head noise. So when he was talking about, you know, you cease fighting anything and anyone, you'll know serenity. Well, you cannot know serenity while you're overanalyzing, and overanalyzing is 100% based in fear and self-reliance. And yeah, that's what I would add, because that is something that I've seen change the most for me. And I see how messed up I was as a result. And there was no connecting to God when I was trying to figure God out, you know?
Okay. Yeah, that dishonesty is the creeper. Dishonesty in one area will bleed into all areas. That's why rigorous honesty is so important. So next week we will be reviewing step 10 again, but out of the 12 and 12. It gives us more identification markers of how to kind of navigate with step 10. Talks about inventory a little more and does some certain things. It's a very short chapter, so we'll blast through that chapter, might finish a little bit early, and then after that on the next week we'll do step 11. So other than that, I think that's it for tonight.
Next week I'll be working, so I won't be here. So I'm back to work, and I work alternating Mondays, so just here every second Monday. I'm sometimes here. So there's that.
10-4.